You're listening to the podcast for all of the news, notes, and breakdowns for your Ohio State Buckeyes. This is Sons of the Shoe with Nick Wilson and Spencer German.
Sons of the Shoe returns. Jake Vulinec, Spencer German with you as we get you ready for the big game tonight. Biggest one of the season for obvious reasons. A championship is on the line, and the Buckeyes trying to pull off something that 51 days ago we thought was completely improbable, as Ryan Day stood there looking dejected and completely lost after a Michigan game that he lost for the fourth straight year. And yet here we are. So excited to be able to talk about this game with you guys. Excited to be back. You can like, follow, subscribe, review the Sons of the Shoe podcast, wherever you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app, also Apple, if I didn't say it already. And of course, the 92 Through the Fan YouTube channel, where you can watch the show, comment on the show if there's anything you want to jump in on based on what we talk about here today. Jake, how are you feeling on this championship morning Monday?
Well, I've been better, that's for sure.
I know you were dealing with a cold, so hopefully you're through the worst of it.
Yeah, the modern Black Plague. I don't know what it is, but it's currently kicking my ass. But we're better off now, definitely better than we were a few days ago. So now I'm ready for football. I'm ready for a championship football, and all of my sickness will be cured with an Ohio State championship.
There you go. Well, I was going to say, I'm glad that modern medicine has come so far, that the plague isn't quite as detrimental to society as it used to be back in the medieval times.
Now
yes.
it puts me in bed for like a day. That's about what it did. It made me sleep until 6 p.m.
Listen, I'm not saying that you want to be sick and bedridden, but if there's an excuse to it's never terrible. Like, it's not the end of the world if you just got to lay in bed for a day, just kind of, sleep and whatever. I'm sure it wasn't that easy to sleep because you were sick, but you got through it. So I'm glad you're through the worst of it. And like you said, hopefully an Ohio State win cures all and it certainly would cure all with Ryan Day. Hopefully it would cure all when it comes to your illnesses as well. So we'll see if they can pull it off.
I think I like the idea of putting my sickness and whether or not I'm healthy on Ryan Day's shoulders. Why not just add another feather to the cap?
So if he loses this game, Jake is back on the fire Ryan Day train. He didn't help me heal. What is wrong with this guy?
Yeah, they always say, you have to be ready to heal, right? Your body has to be ready. You can't be beaten down and not taking care of yourself. Well, part of that starts with being happy and in a good mood, and that's Ryan Day in Ohio State championship. So, it's in your hands, Ryan. It's in your hands, all right? That's all I'm saying.
No more added pressure or anything, but Jake's illness and sick and health depends on it, okay? So let's get the job done.
My sickness, my health, the Buckeyes fan base, one of these are clearly more important, okay? Come on.
Well, to you, it should be, because to you, your health and sickness is obviously more important. Well, speaking of health and sickness, because I do think that there seems to be a sickness among maybe somewhat Buckeyes fans, but also I think Michigan fans over this game today. And it revolves around the fact that there are some people who legitimately are trying to sell this narrative that if Ohio State loses, or if Ohio State wins the championship today and beats Notre Dame, that it would have a little less weight to it because they lost to Michigan. And I don't know how you feel about this, Jake, and we'll obviously get into it here on the show. I think this is a great topic to sort of open with before we talk more about, from the X's and O's standpoint, how this thing could go, because I just don't buy into this at all. And you know my stance on this. It's the diehard Buckeyes fans who call in and say beating Michigan matters more than a championship. We've heard that for years on the show. And we've given credence and respect to the fact that a lot of times that game did have playoff implications, because it was sometimes number one versus number two, or one of the teams was ranked and one of them wasn't, and losing to the unranked, whichever team was unranked, knocked that team out of a chance to compete for a championship. So in respect to the history of the rivalry, I'm not trying to say that it doesn't matter anymore and it shouldn't matter at all, but for that to be something that people are going to use to taint a potential championship season for the Buckeyes, I just can't subscribe to that, because the championship is the thing that everybody is fighting for. That is the peak of the mountaintop. Beating Michigan is something that is just within your own fan base, or both of these fan bases, that matters. And you look around this sport, I don't see Bama fans complaining that they won a championship the year. I think it was the year that Tua came in for Jalen Hurts and won the game against Georgia in the championship. that was a year that they lost to Auburn in the rivalry game, but they still won a championship. Do you think Bama fans or like Auburn fans are still like, I mean, maybe Auburn fans are still bringing it up like, oh, we beat that championship Alabama team. But do you think Alabama fans are really losing sleep over the fact that they got another ring at everybody else's expense, even though they lost to their biggest rival at the last game of the regular season?
Like, no, obviously not. Because if I go onto Google and I search national champions list for college football, you know whose name pops up that year? Alabama. Yeah. And there's no asterisk next to it because nobody cares outside of Alabama and Auburn. The same way that if Ohio State wins one, there won't be an asterisk saying, but they lost to Michigan this year. You know why? Because nobody outside of Columbus and the surrounding areas and nobody outside of Ann Arbor and the surrounding areas and their fan bases give a damn. Nobody cares. Like, it means absolutely nothing to the rest of the country. So why would it mean less to anybody else? Like, oh, you lost to Michigan. It sucks. Like, would you have loved to have, gotten the clean sweep this year, beat them, won the Big Ten title, won a national championship, and done it in the dominant fashion? Yeah, of course. Why wouldn't you? Like, that is great, but getting to a title doesn't mean anything less. Like, again, like if you put it into NFL perspective, you think a team that goes to the wild card and doesn't win their division and then goes through and wins the Super Bowl cares? No, and I get like the rivalry means more than that. I understand that 100%. But it's the same concept. Like the Super Bowl's all that matters. That's all that counts. The national championship should be all that matters.
Well, and I do think that's the thing that people are worried about, right? Is that this becomes like the watered down NFL schedule. I shouldn't say that necessarily because like the regular season does matter in the NFL, but like, winning your division just doesn't carry like nobody. And if you are buying division championship stuff, you're kind of a loser. Sorry. I don't mean to be harsh, but that's kind of I mean, maybe Browns fans would do it if it happened because because the Browns haven't won the division in since like 1989 or something like that. Like,
I think that's accurate. Yeah.
Maybe if the Browns won the division finally for the first time in like 30 plus years, 40 plus years, maybe fans would do it like the first time around because it's like, well, this has never happened. I can actually get some new apparel because of this. But other than that, like nobody's going around touting that the Ravens are division champs this year because everyone's like, well, you came up short against Josh Allen and the Bills, so too bad. Like, and so, yeah, I get where like you don't want it to become that watered down where that stuff just doesn't matter at all. Like you still want that game to matter. My point all along, Jake, and we've talked about this, is that like that game can matter within the fan bases and it can still carry some weight because listen, like that loss made Ohio State have to go on a tougher path to this championship run that they went on. And they very well could have come out like scathed in it. Like if they had lost to Texas or something, we might've been sitting there like, well, maybe if they hadn't, lost to Michigan, they would have been in the bottom part of the region or the bottom part of the bracket and played, a Penn State team that they already had beaten or played SMU and some of these teams that like they actually would have had it. So it would have been different.
Well, Spencer's flip around who it would have been, right? Like if you beat Michigan, you're in the Big Ten championship.
Yeah.
Let's say even you lose to Oregon, you basically get the Penn State seed.
Yeah. Yeah.
Who did they play?
Yeah. Like, SMU at home and then Boise.
Like,
right.
Not to say that was a cupcake walkthrough schedule, but that's kind of a cupcake walkthrough schedule. Yeah. Like compared to facing Tennessee, Oregon, and then Texas.
Yeah.
Like,
and if they won the Big Ten, they probably would have been in Oregon's spot that Oregon was in to start because they would have been number one overall, obviously.
Right.
And maybe you would have still had the tough draw. Like it would. I don't think Oregon would have dropped as far as Ohio State did, though. That's the thing. Like Oregon probably would have been in the Penn State seed, and they would have been on opposite sides. But yeah, like it still mattered in the sense that like it could have really derailed Ohio State's run to a championship, and it still obviously matters to the fan base because that's one of the things that you go into a season saying they got to check this box, and we can still have a lot of pride and take a lot of pride in that. But to me, like if you're an Ohio State fan walking around like, well, it's just gonna feel so hollow if they win, but they didn't beat Michigan. Like it's not gonna feel right to me. Like what is wrong with you? Like snap out of it, wake up. This is a national
popping champagne.
Yeah, like this is a national championship. And to your point, Jake, like when you Google college football national championships, that is forever. Jack Sawyer said it best in that piece he wrote this week at the Players Tribune. Like a national championship is forever. You know how many people are Googling who's won the Michigan-Ohio State game year to year? Like only Ohio State and Michigan fans, And only maybe like the national media gets involved on that and or joins that narrative, or other fan bases join that narrative when it's like that's the week of the rivalries coming up and people are like, oh, I want to see how many games like each team's won against each other. Like that's it. That's the only time that ever gets looked up. National championships are forever. And so if you're an Ohio State fan who's like crying about like, well, it's just not going to feel right because we didn't do this. Like, dude, snap out of it, wake up, stop being a noob, and like realize the opportunity that the Buckeyes have in front of them. And on the flip side, if you're a Michigan fan who's like touting that it doesn't matter as much and the Buckeyes got in because they had to expand the field and it was like it's a cheap championship and whatever, and they bought their roster and whatever else you want to say, well, to me, then you're just a jealous has-been. Because if Michigan, if the roles were reversed and Michigan was making this run of the championship, you know damn well Michigan fans would be like, we don't care that we lost to Ohio State. We're going to go win a national championship for the second straight year. So it wouldn't even matter to them. Like, I can't, you got to get past this. And I get it. Like the expanded playoff field, people are mad because two teams that had like dreadful losses ended up in the final. But that's also the point here. Like we wanted this. We wanted an expanded field that gave the best teams a chance. Ohio State, whether they lost to Michigan or not, and that game certainly lives in their head, like they were throughout the season one of the best teams in the country. They deserved a shot at this thing. And props to them when things got tight and the playoffs started, they looked like a different team and they played up to their potential. So I'm sorry, like I just can't live in this world where a national championship doesn't matter, or it's like voided or like feels lesser because you lost to Michigan. Like, no, I'm going to buy as much gear as possible and I'm going to walk around talking about Ohio State's national championships. And anytime a Michigan fan wants to chime in and be like, well, you lost to us, ha ha ha, I'm going to be like, yeah, well, guess what? I don't give a damn. Like they got a ring out of this. Like, what do I care? Like national championship. That's all I need. That's the ultimate trump card over everything.
Yeah, I feel like I have to buy a replica ring for this. Just so when Michigan fans walk around and be like, hey, I'm just going to carry it around in my pocket all day and be like, hey, look at, I got one. What's that? Oh, but like, yeah. Michigan fans, like, enjoy your ReliaQuest Bowl win. Like, okay. Like, that's what you got to play for this year. You got to play in the ReliaQuest Bowl against Alabama. That's nice one. Like, that's what the total of 7 wins on the season before your bowl game got you. Like, it's just so dumb to sit here and place the impact in the same way that it was in 1974. Okay? Like, again, times have changed, and you can keep the tradition of the rivalry game. The rivalry game still means something, again, like you said, to the fan bases. To the fan bases, it means something. Like, we should want to walk in. You should want to kick Michigan's ass every single time. The clocks aren't coming down. Michigan's going to walk in, try to kick Ohio State's ass every single time.
Right.
It's going to be there. That's not going away, but it's like the realistic part of it is this sort of proves in year one of a 12-team college football playoff that the game's just not what it used to be. It does not carry the same weight with a 12-team playoff because you lose that game and you can still win a national championship. It shouldn't make Ohio State fans like, oh, this one just doesn't feel the same. It should open your eyes to the fact that college football has changed and that game just doesn't mean the same thing. Like, Ryan Day shouldn't just stick around because he, can win every other game but can't beat Michigan. Like, you eventually have to get over that hump. You got to find a way to beat the team that you play every single year because at one point it is going to come back to bite you. But, like, it's national championships are on the line. If he's finding ways to win those, then you could legitimately, if you lost to Michigan every single year, but continue to win a national championship every single year, but you're going to run the guy out of town? Like, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, they build these rosters for that purpose, right? Like, they are one of the best recruiting teams in the country for that purpose because they're trying to contend with the other, top teams in the country, the Oregons, the Bamas, the Georgias, and I guess Texas is back sort of in that mold now. Like, that's the point. And they build for that point. They these teams all are chasing that goal. Like, if the goal is only to beat Michigan, then it's like, okay, like I can't believe that people would be satisfied if this season had gone like, if they had been like 7-4 and beaten, or like 8-4 and like beat Michigan, like everyone would have been like, well, we didn't make the playoff, but it's okay. We beat Michigan. Like, no, you would have been pissed because this group came back to accomplish 3 things. And yeah, they failed on 2 of them, but they have a chance to make amends here and win a championship and go out on top. And that, again, is something that is forever. And again, you bring it up. Like, yes, the playoff has lessened that game to a degree. That is just the truth. But again, the rivalry can be what we make it. Like, Buckeyes fans and Michigan fans will always care about that game to an extreme level. And the clock, like you said, the clocks are still going to be up in the weight room and they're going to be counting down to that game. It's still going to matter. And so, yeah, we can still get into that game and feel like it's something that Ryan Day has to do and get over, and a hurdle he has to clear, and all those different things, and feel like it matters to a higher level. But it doesn't have to be like the end all be all anymore for what defines a season. And that's why I think that this run that the Buckeyes are on is just brilliant, because it is like a great sports story. It's Ryan Day's redemption arc. 51 days ago, he was standing there despondent with like a blank look on his face, asking his players what happened against Michigan as the flag was being planted. And now here we are with a chance to like rewrite everything that everyone's ever said about him if he can pull off a championship win over Notre Dame. And the same thing goes for this program that seemed like they just couldn't get out of their own way and they couldn't win the close games and all these different things. Like, they have rewritten those narratives and they have a chance to put a nice punctuation on it. I'm not going to sit here and dwell on, oh, well, they lost to Michigan, so this one just, it's still stuck in my craw, and this championship just feels lesser. No, it's a championship. A championship is a championship. Like, that is finite forever. That is going to outlive all of us. And again, when we're all dead and gone, people are going to only look up and see, oh, Ohio State won a championship. And again, they have to get the job done, but they potentially won a championship in the 2024 season. And less people are going to go back and look up if they lost to Michigan that year or not, because it just doesn't matter. Like, losing to Michigan doesn't, like, again, there's no asterisk with it. It's not like they cheated. They're not part of some cheating scandal like Michigan was last year. Like, it's none of that. It's just you lost. Okay, teams lose. And if you win a championship, all is right in the world.
Spencer, I promise you that tomorrow I'll open the night show if Ohio State wins by doing what I promised people I would do, which is I'm going to sit there, I'm going to open the mic, and I'm going to go, where you at? All the people that called in and said Michigan was more important than a national championship. Winning that game is more important. Where are you at? Because I would love to hear your call, and I don't want to hear you excited. I don't want to hear you celebrate a win. I want to hear you tell me that this is a disappointment of a season, and you're going to bed, and there's no celebration, not counting it as an Ohio State championship.
You should
run Ryan Day out of town.
What you should do is open the show and say, I want to know where all those Buckeyes fans who said the Michigan game's the only thing that matters are right now. That's what you should say. That's a little long-winded. But if you can find a way to make it a little bit more succinct, it'd be better. But I do like that, and I might just call in, not because I was somebody who was saying that, but just because I kind of want to hear the responses and I want to go back and forth with you. So we obviously will have a chance to react to it live in real time tonight after the game. Jake and I will be on with a new episode, post-game show, whatever the results may be, for better or for worse, which hopefully it's for the better, because if it's a loss, I am going to be a miserable person and just want to go to bed. I may actually be caught drinking on the show. Who knows? But before we get there, Jake, obviously we wanted to talk a little bit more about this game from like an X's and O's standpoint and, how it could play out, because as we've gotten closer and closer, I got to tell you, like, initial reaction when you hear Notre Dame, Ohio State after they beat Texas last week, my thought was like, okay, no disrespect to Notre Dame, but I do think, like, of the teams they've played, they have the best chance against Notre Dame, because I just don't think Notre Dame's offense can score enough. And I know their defense is very good, but Ohio State's defense is also very good. And I think Ohio State's offense will eventually figure it out, even if it takes them some time here. But as you've gotten closer and closer, I've seen everybody's like riding the Ohio State train. Everybody's picking them. And that always makes me nervous. And I just worry if there's like one of these routes where, not to say they do the exact Michigan game plan, because again, nobody's in Ryan Day's head like Michigan is. But I do wonder if there's a way where Notre Dame can muck this game up and keep it close. And then, because that feels like the way they have to win. And the more and more I think about it and get in my head about it, because we've had such a long time between games to just kind of stew in it, the more worried I am about Notre Dame being able to pull something like that off.
Yeah, I don't think like Notre Dame's this rollover team that you're walking in a national championship and just going to stomp out. Like, they're a legitimate football team. Marcus Freeman has put together a team that is very strong defensively. And you know what? When they're clicking offensively, I don't think they have the same firepower that, like you said, that Ohio State has. I don't think it's quite to that level, but they can put points on the board. Like, Jeremiah Love will definitely help you push your way down the field. They're going to be more methodical moving the ball. It's not going to be the big chunk plays, not as explosive. They're going to look to not even necessarily muck this game up, I think, but to really slow this game down, to be able to control the pace And it's almost and I don't want to put this, it's not the same level. It is not I'm not comparing anybody directly, but it is how you treat the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes in the NFL of, hey, if we can keep the ball out of their hands, they can't score the football. And if we can make this game, 17-14,
yeah,
that is our perfect way to win, because if you just hand them the ball a few times, you get a couple of stops, this game goes your way. I think that's sort of the game plan right now if you're Notre Dame, is just keep it out of Ohio State's hands as long as possible, make sure you're executing and wear this defense down, keep them on the field, and make sure that, as much as you can, that if Ohio State's going to score, they're probably not going to keep you out there for a 15-play drive that takes 10 minutes. Like, it's not going to happen.
So what I heard you say was that Riley Leonard is Patrick Mahomes.
No, not even close. Riley
Did I
Leonard,
misunderstand you?
Yeah, I think he's a little bit closer to like Gardner Minshew, but
man,
he's a fine quarterback.
Yeah.
Like he's okay. It's not. I think that him and Will Howard are like relatively comparable. I think Will Howard has the edge. I think he's the better quarterback.
I agree.
It's not some miles like, oh, I would take Will Howard in a heartbeat over Riley Leonard.
Yeah.
It's just like, they're around the same caliber, and Will's probably got the edge. He's a better quarterback. I'd rather have him.
Well, I think you're right about sort of the analysis there, because like to make the game like 17-14, right? Because like Notre Dame's point total for this game in Vegas is like 17.5. Like they don't think they're going to be able to score that much either. And that goes back to how good Ohio State's defense is, but also Notre Dame's offense isn't some like juggernaut the way that Ohio State's is viewed. So yeah, like that's going to be, I think, a challenge for them. But like I said, if their defense, if they can keep their offense on the field for long extended drives, like you mentioned, if they can just get the stops, the necessary stops against Ohio State's offense, they're going to give themselves a chance. What I do think is interesting on like the back end is like Notre Dame is a man team, but we saw what Texas did against Jeremiah Smith. Like they played a lot of zone, they bracketed him, they tried to kind of keep him from going against man-to-man coverage. Is Notre Dame going to show some different things than what they've done all year to try to prevent him from absolutely torching them? Because I think that's going to be a massive key for this defense if they're going to have success against Ohio State. So I'm interested to see what they do there. But yeah, like the thing I keep going back to is just the thought that like, I like Notre Dame could keep this close for a while because their defense is good. And I could see them sort of stopping or limiting Ohio State's offense for a period of time. But at some point, it just feels like that offense is inevitable and they will sort of break through. And if they keep getting shots, and I just think like Ohio State's defense continues to be the kicker for me. Like every time I worry about like, oh, well, what if Ryan Day like tries to run the ball too much, or he like gets in his head about certain things, or the offense just can't, they have like that middle that the middle drives against Texas where it was like they were trying to run on first down a lot more and it wasn't really working. And they kind of like got away from what they do best until they finally had that long drive to score to go up 21-14. Like that stretch of drives, like what if that's what we get from this game? Because Notre Dame just finds a way to slow down the pace of play and not let Ohio State sort of dictate things. And then I go back to, okay, but even if that happens, I trust this Ohio State defense with my life at this point. Like that group has been so good since the Oregon game. They've changed the way they do things. Like there's no more of this like pass rushers running past the quarterback and when they're rushing, they're sort of cutting it down and then like bending in to try to collapse the pocket. And like since that game, they've just gotten steadily better to the point where and they have this setup now with the two safeties. Caleb Downs plays kind of in the middle as a third safety in the box a little bit. And like nobody can do anything against this defense. I'm not saying that won't change, that Notre Dame won't find something, but that's the thing for me that I keep going back to is like, even if Notre Dame slows down Ohio State, I still feel like Ohio State's getting to at least 24 points, 20 to 24 points, somewhere in that range. Can Notre Dame get the 20, 24 points with this offense against that defense? That's the thing that I'm kind of holding on to is like, I don't know if they can.
Yeah, it's just, I'm confident in Ohio State to hit that number. I don't think there's any way that they don't. Like, just find me a way that this defense, every week, you're hearing that this might be the best defense Ohio State's played, right? I mean, from Michigan on, it's like, oh, Michigan might be the best defense they've played all year. Okay, like it's a good defense, good front seven. Missing Will Johnson, but it's fine. Like, and then, oh, Tennessee, really good defense, strong
really
front
big.
seven.
Yeah, they got a front seven. Yeah.
And then you walk through them. We already knew Oregon's defense, right? Like they're better than they were before, 34-0. Like Texas's defense, really good. Okay, you bracketed Jeremiah Smith, took a little bit to get going, eventually figured it out and found out the game. And, I guess you didn't figure it out entirely. Like, you scored, 21, and then
technically the offense scored the 21 points, yeah. But again, that's a game against that's a game against a good defense. And like I said, I trust the offense to get to at least 21 points kind of on their own. If the defense sets you up with like a short field or something like that, then it becomes like 24-31. And that's kind of my point. This defense is the thing that I trust to sort of be the difference in this game in terms of like setting Ohio State up for success.
Yeah, I think you have to rely on the defense. They're going to be what comes through and has come through for you time after time. It's interesting. I think Jeremiah Smith, what gets done with him by Notre Dame is sort of what happens with the Ohio State offense. I don't know that they figure out in one game what to do when you take away Jeremiah Smith. I don't know that they figure that out. Their offense this playoffs has sort of relied on, I'm able to throw to that guy. And in Texas, you couldn't throw to that guy, and the offense looked slower. You struggled to figure it out. Will Howard never really got it going. So you might run into it again. I think the rumor was coming out that Notre Dame was just going to stick in man, which would be by all means.
Well, because they are a man defense. That's what they run. That's their staple. But I would imagine there's no way they can just play man straight up the whole game against him. They're going to probably steal some stuff from the Texas game. But I think the counter to that too, though, Jake, is as much as they're going to sort of counter with some things that maybe they're not used to because of what they saw in the Texas game, I'm going to guess that Ohio State went back and watched the Texas game and said, all right, how can we find ways to get Jeremiah Smith more open and get the ball in his hands, even when teams are bracketing him and playing zone against him? What are some other things that we can do? And they'll find ways to do it. In that Oregon game, they got him the ball kind of on that end around sort of screen pass play. You know what I mean? They'll do stuff like that to try to open him up and give him an opportunity to go make plays downfield, because he's the type of player that it doesn't really matter what coverage he's in. I mean, you shouldn't make a stupid throw that's going to be intercepted, but he can make a play, whether it's you give him the ball in the backfield, you throw it to him 5 yards over the middle, you throw it to him downfield in double coverage. He can almost make a play anytime at any given moment.
Yeah, I would like to see them put him in motion a lot today.
Agreed.
And just kind of move him around the field, constantly having him run across and try to keep the Notre Dame defense, if they're going to try to bracket you, if they're going to try to put safety help over the top, well, good luck. And this guy's going to be running all across the field. Again, I think the screen passes, get the ball in his hands, let him work. Just give the ball to your best playmaker and let him go make plays. We saw last week, they can be fine without it. He had one catch for 3 yards. They can find ways to win even when Jeremiah Smith isn't there. It's just a lot better when they're trying to win when he, is contributing.
And that's the beauty of it is, if he's taken away, he's at least a decoy, right? He's at least a player that you have to account for at all times. So that gives Emeka Egbuka, that gives Cardinal Tate, that gives Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, that gives G. Scott, that gives them opportunities to then be the ones making plays because they know Jeremiah Smith's getting extra attention. And we saw them take advantage of those guys last week against Texas. And I also will say this, Jake, real quick before you sort of move forward here. I do think too, Ohio State got their worst offensive game out of the way because all the penalties, I just don't think they're going to do that again on this stage. That felt like the game where they got a lot of that stuff out of the way, and now they'll play a little bit cleaner. I'm not saying there'll be nothing or there won't be any penalties or anything, but I'm hopeful that that game was last round, and now they'll be back focused and kind of ready to go for this Notre Dame game where they won't let they won't shoot themselves in the foot quite as much as they did in that one. All right, so we've been having some fun throughout the playoffs. We normally do the Michigan panic meter, but to make the bit sort of more fun, we have changed it to whatever team they were playing in that round of the playoffs panic meter. And so we will do the Notre Dame panic meter, of course, for today, as counting you down to kickoff here between the Buckeyes and the Fighting Irish. Jake, I will let you go first. What is your panic level for the Ohio State or for Notre Dame later today?
Spencer put me dead in center.
In the white?
In the white.
Okay. In the white.
Right in the white. And I'll tell you what, the only reason that I'm here for Notre Dame, it's a national championship. I gotta show some respect. I can't say that I'm in the light gray on a national championship game.
You don't want to give them any extra fuel, because I hear that Marcus Freeman, I hear, listens to the podcast. He's going to use this as bulletin board material. Those guys at Sons of the Shoe, if we say we're in the dark gray and we're just not worried at all, he's going to use that to get his team revved up before the game. So we don't want to add to any fuel to the fire for the Fighting Irish. I respect that.
Yeah, the rumor that I heard is he listens to an Apple podcast and is constantly refreshing right now.
That's a smart way to do it, honestly.
Yeah, that's the way I would do it personally. But yeah, I think honestly, just my panic meter comes up. You are in the national championship. I think that drives a lot of this. Like, I think Notre Dame's a really respectable team. I think the number that came out when you started this game, when it opened on the markets for betting, was like -10 for Ohio State.
I think it was 10.5. Yeah, something like that.
That's far too high. I think it's come down to like 7 or 8.5.
I think it's 8.5 now is what I've kind of seen. So yeah,
it feels like a much better number. Double digits feels crazy for a national championship, no matter who's playing in it. Like that game just,
yeah. I know there's years where like Bama was clearly like just a juggernaut, right, and like made sense. Like same thing with like Georgia and TCU a couple years ago, where that was like 63-10 or whatever the hell it was. Like, yeah. So I get it. It's just funny because like, yeah, if I was a Bama fan and Bama was in this championship, I'd probably be like, yeah, 10.5, they're going to cover that easy. But because it's Ohio State and I've seen this team just flub things too much, I'm like 10.5. They ain't gonna do that. Like it's just the way I'm like I'm trained at this point to just not trust them. So I'm with you on that.
Yeah, I watched them put up 34-0 against Oregon. Still don't trust them to cover 10.5. But
until they do it, I don't trust them. Yep.
Yeah, it's a good team. I think you put your respect on them in the national championship. You go right down. Excuse me. You go right down the middle. Not like overly worried about Notre Dame. Like, I'm not going to be sweating this game out from the very start, thinking that Ohio State is going to lose. Like, oh man, they're going to have to pull up some crazy things. I think it's Ohio State plays their game and they win the game of football.
I am a little bit more panicked than Jake, but that's not a surprise because I am the more hyperbolic one on the show when it comes to this team. I am in the light scarlet, a little bit past the white. And I think a lot of that just centers around the national championship. They got to this stage. They actually made it. I don't want to see them lose and miss this opportunity. I'm worried Notre Dame's going to like pull like Notre Dame. I feel like I'm worried Notre Dame's going to make some big play, whether it's like a defensive, like a pick six or like a kickoff return or something that's going to like shift the game a little bit or shift the momentum a little bit and get Ohio State in a tighter spot. That kind of worries me to death. And so, yeah, like this is the fan coming out of me 100%. But again, people who listen to the show regularly, that's not surprising because this is how I am. I leave a game and I'm like supremely confident afterwards that Ohio State's great. And then I go into the next game and I'm just a nervous wreck thinking that they're going to lose. And so, yeah, I'm a little bit nervous about this one, but that's not a surprise for me.
Yeah, not shocked at all. Not given no
it's
reason.
It's like very on brand for you, Spencer.
Yeah,
very on brand.
That's pretty much, yeah. Like not a real reason to be nervous. Like we haven't seen
just making stuff up. Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, like
Jake, we've had such a long time. Like, dude, it feels like Friday's win over Texas was like 4 weeks ago. Like it feels like it was ages ago. I feel like I've been stewing in like, how is this game going to go for so long at this point that like, yeah, when you have to think about it that long, you make up reasons why your team's going to lose. So here I am now panicked as hell because I guess not as hell. Panicked as hell would be full on scarlet. But yeah, I'm just a little bit more nervous than I probably should be.
Yeah, how did I end up being the one sick? You're the one sitting over here staying up at night, putting the string in the bulletin board.
I'm losing sleep. You know what it is? It's like that. It's that meme with the guy and the girl in bed, and she's like looking over at him, and he's like rolled over on with his back to her. And she's like, he's probably thinking about other girls. And then it's just like, nope, I'm just thinking about how Ohio State can blow this game against Notre Dame. That's me. That's me just laying in bed, losing sleep over it.
I'm thinking about Riley Leonard throwing an 84-yard screen pass touchdown to Jeremiah Love.
Oh, man. Please don't let that happen. Please. All right. Well, we'll get out of here. One final sort of portion of the show here, Jake. And we saved it for last. We promised we were going to get here. Some predictions for this one. We've sort of shared our panic levels on this one. How do we think this game is going to go? I can start us off on this one since I made you go first in the panic meter. I was in the spirit of my sort of panic here. I'm going to say Ohio State wins 27-20. One score game. Notre Dame keeps it interesting. This is what I think is going to happen versus like what I hope happens, which is just like we get 34-0 in the first half, like against Oregon, and then I, can rest easy, understanding that it's going to be a blowout. But listen, I just think Notre Dame's a tough team. There's that phrase that Ryan Day always hates hearing. And I do think that their defense can at least make it interesting and keep Ohio State at bay for a little while. But I think ultimately, like, Ohio State's defense is going to be too much for Notre Dame to move the ball too much on up and down the field. And I think, like, Ohio State's offense, even if they're slow out of the gate, will find a way to break through. I'll also say this, Jake, first drive of the game for Ohio State, that to me is going to be a critical drive. They have scored on their first drive of the game in every game in this playoff. And if they don't do that in this game, again, me being the nervous wreck that I am, I'm going to be nervous because it's going to be like, okay, this is the first team to stop them on the opening drive. How does Ohio State respond to something that hasn't happened to them in this playoff yet? Like, are they going to come out and be a little bit more timid and worried because they couldn't score on the first drive? What's the second drive going to look like? So I do think, like, whether they get the ball first or they get the ball second and then they got to go down the field and score, how that first drive looks, I think, could ultimately be a barometer for how this game could end up sort of playing out or how it could go. So that's kind of where my head's at with it.
All right. Well, now you've officially scared me. They're the Cleveland Browns, with coached by Kevin Stefanski. They score on the first drive.
Not this year, they didn't.
Oh, well,
a few times.
Excluding 2024. They couldn't find the end zone, period. I mean,
that's true. Yeah. This offense was historically bad. You're right about
that. No, but I think I'll go Ohio State to win, obviously, and I'll take it 24-14.
Okay.
I'll give
they win by 10.
They win by 10 on the dot. I think you just...
Even though you just said a double-digit national championship is kind of crazy.
No, I said a double-digit spread national championship is crazy. Double-digit result is not crazy. Okay? When Vegas is telling you it's double digits, it's like really telling you it's about to be a 28-point game, but we can't say that. That's what it's telling you, okay? Yeah, no, I think that Ohio State eventually finds success, sort of breaks through, and I think Notre Dame's offense just takes too long to get going. They try to play this slow-paced game. I think they know that's their route, but they're just not going to be able to move the ball well enough. Ohio State's defense is going to stand tall, and it's going to set up the offense and the ability to do what they need to do and just sort of survive against Notre Dame's defense and eventually put the points up. It's not going to come in bunches. I don't expect them to go up 24-0. I think that you just gradually build out your lead. And you're probably sitting here at some point in the third or fourth quarter being like, man, like Ohio State might lose this. Not like they're going to be down, but like Notre Dame's going to have a chance in this game come up to the final minutes. But they'll walk away with it. They'll feel good. And hopefully we'll be celebrating at the end of this thing.
I like the idea of the defense being the thing that sort of like secures the win again, like making a big stop on, Notre Dame has the ball down a possession or something like that, or a chance to make it interesting. And then the defense kind of gets that big stop, kind of like they did last week against Texas with the big touchdown play from Jack Sawyer. So we will see how it all goes. I'm here at Ball and Nerves on Monday. Jake and I are going to be right back on 92 through the Fan this afternoon, talking about this some more, which I'm actually excited about because that's an easy way for me to sort of kill some time and not just be stewing in it, is just be able to talk sports on the radio. So you'll find us there, but you can also find us post-game with another episode of Sons of the Shoe. We'll go live reaction show, hopefully with a positive result to talk about. So be sure to like, follow, subscribe, review the Sons of the Shoe podcast, wherever it is you get your podcast, Apple, Spotify, the Odyssey app that I mentioned, Apple, and of course at the 92 through the Fan YouTube channel, where you can jump in the comment section. We hope to see many of you there later tonight as well. Jake, it has been a fun, wild ride to get to this point. We have one game left to go in this season, and I look forward to talking with you about it later tonight. But as always, we end with maybe the most emphatic "Go Bucks" of the season. Go Bucks, Jake.
Go Bucks.